I mean, what about our own efforts in Ukraine? I mean, I'm thinking specifically of the reporting by our colleague Deborah Haynes the other day about, the UK's using Ukraine as a battle laboratory to test our weaponry.
Yeah, and we've seen, I think, a demonstration of that, haven't we, in recent days, of showing that the British military wants to learn from the conflict, not just in terms of drone use, but also how you become more nimble-footed on the battlefield, and how you improvise. So they were using electric bikes, soldiers on electric bikes whistling around, I think, Salisbury Plain, with anti-tank missiles.
That almost looks, Dom, like exercises in 1938 when soldiers were on bikes because they didn't have any tanks, and there were always lots of photographs of Dad's army stuff, home guard. But here we are, wheels come full circle. Soldiers on electric bikes with NLAWs might turn out to be really rather effective.
I was going to say there's absolutely nothing wrong with using a conflict to find out your own capabilities and capacities, and perhaps get some intel on the other side.
And there's no doubt that's what everyone's doing. I mean, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Russians, obviously looking at this very closely and working out is the next war going to use manpower at all? Is it going to be entirely drone based? Is it going to be mechanised? Who knows? But I think it's being analysed, and both sides are taking off the battlefield what they can in terms of machines and devices, taking them apart and reverse engineering them to learn from them. The Chinese will be doing that, the Iranians and the British are saying that as well.
But one thing that is coming off the battlefield, and this is not, this is just a byproduct of the war, would have happened anyway, is that in every category, land systems, maritime systems, air systems, backup systems, cyber, electronic systems, Western technology is far superior to the Russian technology and military that's been sold all over the world. And a lot of customers around the world who've taken a lot of Russian weapons over the last 30 years are kind of looking at their stocks now saying, well, actually, Western stocks are much, much better. And although there's a sort of cynicism to this, and this is absolutely not why the war started, but Western defence companies know that they're in for a bit of a bonanza after this, because it's showing that actually the superior technology of Western systems makes a difference when it comes to a competition.
Having said that, though, potential aggressors will be looking as well and saying, if the Russians end up keeping, I think 17, I think the Ukrainians say 20% of their country, don't they?
It's less than that, yeah.
Whatever the proportion is. If somehow they manage to make this work and it sticks, and then they're able to stay there for a few more years, and it's a kind of negotiated settlement, it'll encourage strong men the world over.
And that's a political judgment. If you can get away with it, that's a political judgment.
And you're even more encouraged, aren't you, if you've been able to do that with what is pretty old-fashioned
with old-fashioned, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what is our assessment of where Vladimir Putin is currently, given the events of the past few weeks, the Prigozhin marching on the Kremlin? In fact, I'm not even entirely certain where Prigozhin is at the moment. I mean, I get that the Russian people value the strongman as leader mode. I completely understand that. But, there are an awful lot of Russians returning in body bags.
Anna Magne, I mean, she's been reporting, the Russian media is frankly confused now since the Prigozhin attempted coup. It's now called a riot. It's now called a sort of a demonstration that got out of order, got out of hand. And, I mean, it took place on the 24th of June. On the 29th of June, 5 days later, Putin had a meeting in the Kremlin with Prigozhin and 35 of the Wagner leaders. And we know it because he admitted it himself. He gave an interview to Kommersant in which he talked about this. And so what the Russian public have been treated to is, what the West is regarding as a popcorn moment. You just sit with the popcorn and watch. Is these people were, first of all, they were traitors and they were scum. Then a few days later, they were patriots and they were misled patriots. Prigozhin has got his fortune. Wagner is not disarming. Wagner is still in formed units. There's a great deal of distrust. And in the meantime, there's a military purge going on of the VDV, the airborne forces, because they're close to Wagner. And this purge is not driven by Putin. It's driven from the MOD. It's Shoigu and Gerasimov to a lesser extent. And they're purging commanders, good commanders. And so there's a civil war going on in the Ministry of Defence. And Putin's trying to stay away from it. But he's looking very vulnerable. That doesn't mean to say he's going to fall, but he suddenly doesn't look like a strong man. He looks like somebody who is extremely indecisive, which actually has been the story since the invasion started. Indecision.
And I think he's okay for now, and it's very hard to work out what happened then and what's happening now. But he's all right for now, I think. But I think he's weak, and there are cracks for when the war turns against him.